Coming up on the next episode of Zuzu All Grown Up.
Get ready to meet a man who never had a normal job and wouldn't have it any other way. Today's guest, Sal St. turned his love of classic comedy into a lifelong adventure through theater, theme parks, and television.
Look, Daddy, teacher says every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings.
You're now listening to Zuzu All Grown Up.
She's been featured in more than 20 films from the early days of film and television.
He is a psychotherapist and her loving husband.
Together, they are on a mission to brighten your day and your life.
It's a time to smile, a time to laugh, a time to expect more.
It's time to get inspired with your hosts, Karolyn Grimes and Dr. Chris Brunell.
It's time to meet Zuzu, all grown up.
Karolyn Grimes has made a lifelong commitment that is based on the profound belief that everyone deserves to experience their own wonderful life. Her husband, Dr. Chris Brunell, has long since joined her on this mission, bringing his own unique passion and insight. Together, their dedication reflects a deep desire to inspire others to embrace the profound truth that life is truly wonderful when we recognize and cherish the love and connections that are all around us. Join Karolyn and Chris to witness how one individual's life can inspire countless others, revealing the transformative power of one person who is determined to do good. As you connect with our inspiring guests, you'll realize that your own journey is also about self-realization, helping others, and earning your wings. Just like today's guest, you too have a unique potential to inspire and elevate those around you. Stay tuned. Another episode of Zuzu, All Grown Up, is about to begin.
Get ready for miracles. Get ready for Zuzu. All Grown Up.
Today, we're welcoming Sal St. Sal is a scriptwriter, director, producer, speaker, comedy historian, and so much more. If it involves entertainment, Sal's probably done it. Sal, we can't wait to hear your story. Karolyn, Dr. Chris, take it away.
Hello, everyone. Today we have a very special guest. Let me introduce Sal. This is Sal St. And from what I read about you, you're a script writer, director, producer, speaker, comedy writer, and I'm sure much, much more. My goodness.
I just make it all up as I go along, Karolyn. To be honest with you, I've never had a job. I've always been self-employed as far back as I can remember. Yeah, when I was a teenager, I had some jobs in shoe stores and in supermarkets. But as a living, I've always been self-employed. I've always had my own company. I used to say, I love my job, but I hate my boss.
What is your earliest recollection of wanting to be in the entertainment business?
I remember watching Abbott and Costello movies here in New York every Sunday morning. They ran them, and I was in love with the Abbott and Costello films. I remember I had a reel-to-reel tape recorder. That's before we had VHS or anything else. And I recorded the program. And I used to listen to Abbott and Costello Meets Frankenstein over and over again to the point that I could do all the dialogue. But when I got to college, there was a TV show that came on, took America by storm, and it was called Laugh-In. I must have an affinity towards comedy teams because, as I said, I loved Abbott and Costello, Burns and Allen. And then when Rowan and Martin came out, I decided, because I was a writer in college, that's what I was taking up. I was taking up journalism. I decided to write my own stage play, and it was called Canned Laughter. And I put together a group of students that were my crazies, just like laughing. And we did a live show. I was hooked on entertainment from that point on. I ended up taking a class, and this is in the 70s, and film was just now being regarded as an art form. And I took a class all about film, and the professor gave us an assignment to write a paper all about any famous comedian that we wanted to. And at that point, in the 70s. Charlie Chaplin was king, Buster Keaton, Harold Lloyd, W.C. Fields, the Marx Brothers. But as I indicated, Abbott and Costello, those are the people I were following. So I asked my professor, can I write about them? And he said, go ahead. So I started putting together as much as I could about them. But in those days, there were no books written about Abbott and Costello. We're talking about the early 70s. So I started doing a lot of research. And to trim this all down, there was a gentleman in New York by the name of Joe Franklin. I don't know if you remember Joe Franklin, but he was the king of nostalgia. And I tracked him down. I found out where his office was. I said, do you know anything? Did you ever have them on your TV show? Because he was on for over 40 years on WOR in New York. And he said, no, I've never had them, but I did have a writer on the show that put a book together called Whatever Became Of. And he said he interviewed Bud Abbott just recently. Lou had long ago passed away. So he gave me the phone number. This gentleman, Richard Lamparski is his name. And I called him up and I told him what I was doing, a paper all about Abbott and Costello. And he said, I haven't spoken to Bud since that book came out. It was over a year ago. I'm already working on another book. But here's his contact. You can call him up and maybe they can give you some information. So here I am in New York. I dialed a number and I hear, hello? And it was Bud Abbott. I had no idea he was going to answer his own phone. And I told him what I was doing. And he said, why don't you come on over? He must have thought I was calling from California. I was in New York. And I said, okay. And we made arrangements. It was right around the holidays. He said, why don't we wait till after the holidays, sometime February or March? So that's exactly what we did. We made arrangements. I was supposed to be out there for 3 days, and they ended up spending 3 weeks. And I met Steve Allen, the Andrews sisters, Joe Besser, who played Stinky on their TV show, Glenn Strange, who played Frankenstein, and Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, a gentleman by the name of Candy Candido. People don't realize it, but after Lou died, Bud tried to resuscitate his career by getting a new partner. They were doing pretty well, but it was very short-lived because of his health. When I came back, Bud had given me a stack of old scripts that he and Lou had used in vaudeville and burlesque. I just put them in a drawer. I had a friend of mine by the name of Mickey Sharkey, and he was an entertainer. I was doing stand-up at the time, and he said, why don't we learn that Who's on First routine, you and me? I said, okay, why not? He said, what part do you want? I would crack up too much. I just can't be a straight man. And whenever he had a show, I would go with him, and we would just throw it in the middle of his act. When I had a show, he would come, and I would throw him into the middle of my act. And the next thing you know, we were doing Who's on First all the time. A friend of mine owned a dinner theater on Long Island. He said, you know, you're always talking about this Abbott and Costello stuff. Why don't you put together a show? Because it was like a dinner theater, and he always had Fiddler on the Roof and all kinds of shows. And we ended up putting together a old-time vaudeville show, just like Bud and Lou would have been. No stripping, no four-letter words. It was just a good old-fashioned laugh fest. And we ended up doing that for 14 years, touring up and down the Eastern Seaboard.
That's incredible.
Did you actually stay at his home?
No, because I was visiting so many people, and that would have been, to me, imposing. At that point in his life, it was only 2 years prior to his passing. He was in a wheelchair. He was still sitting there smoking. He had one of those old-fashioned cigarette holders, you know, those ivory cigarette holders. And you want to hear a funny thing? When I did interview him, again, I was only a kid. I was like 20, 21, somewhere in there. I had a little tiny tape recorder, a cassette player with a little round microphone. I took it out. I put it down. I said, do you mind if I record this? He said, no problem. I had forgotten all about that recording. And years later, I was up in my attic and I saw this box. And I called my son over, Darren, and you met him, Karolyn. You're going to meet him again in a couple of weeks. I brought him down. He was only about 13, and I started going through all my notes, all my pictures, everything about Abbott and Costello. And then at the bottom of the box was a cassette and it said interview Bud Abbott. I didn't even know I still had it, and I had it digitally transferred, and that was the basis of me doing lectures at universities and colleges, because I had pretty much the last interview that Bud Abbott was able to do, and I had all his comments about how they met, why they broke up, his money problems. It was interesting, and that's how I live. I love meeting people like yourself. You're part of entertainment history, and I've seen how the people are so enamored with you and the work that you did. I remember when I interviewed you years ago, two things stood out. You told me that you can claim that you sat in Jimmy Stewart's lap, Bing Crosby's lap, Cary Grant's lap, that nobody else can make that claim. And then you talked about the great birthday party that John Wayne threw for you. So you had great stories as well. You're part of history. You know, I've taken everything that I ever started doing, a hobby, and turned it into my work. When I started out in the very beginning, when I did that Laugh-In show in college, right after that, I started doing stand-up and I started doing magic. My claim to fame with magic, I did quite a bit. I worked in a lot of resorts and hotels and such, but my claim to fame is I was in a movie called Desperately Seeking Susan, starring Roseanne Arquette and Madonna. My job was to teach the performers magic, because there were scenes that took place in a magic club. So I went in there and I taught them all these magic tricks. And Madonna was not Madonna at that point. This was her breakthrough. That was her first film. And I remember sitting down with her and talking, and she was just like everybody else. And she would talk about going to Catholic school. And I had done the same thing. So we had that in common. And then she left. I don't know where she ever ended up. I'm here with Karolyn.
How were you received back in those days?
It stayed with me. From that point on, I never got a job. Scripts that he gave me, I developed the old-time vaudeville show, and we did that for 14 years. I'll give you a good example when you say, how were you received? If you remember Joe Besser, he was one of the Three Stooges for a short while, but most importantly, he was on the Abbott and Costello show, and he played Stinky. And I remember pulling up to his house, and he had one of these California Tudor-type homes. And I'm pulling the car up, and I see him on his front stoop. And the guy that I've seen on TV so many times comes waddling down the driveway and welcomes me into his home. And it was like that with all of them. They were all just like with Patty Andrews, all of them. And Joe was at the end of his career, so to speak. He was doing cartoon voiceovers, but he was primarily staying home taking care of his wife. When I went in his house, all around the walls were all kinds of pictures of the great people that he worked with, because he worked with everybody in show business. He was very popular. He said something to me then that it resonates more now. And he said, Sal, don't let anybody ever tell you you can't live on memories. I do it every day. And now, at my age, it really resonates with me.
I find it interesting that a young man would be so interested in like the historical, the classic, the older generation, rather than maybe something that was more current at the time.
When I was doing stand-up, I worked for everybody, just so many people that I did work with. It was laying down the groundwork for myself. So when we were doing that show and touring, on one occasion, we were working in Florida. And my wife and I, in between shows, decided to go see Disney World. And while we were there, we were watching a stage show. And my wife said to me, that dance number they just did was very similar to the one you just put in our show. And I said, yeah, it was very, very similar. She said, you should talk to them. Disney, maybe they'd be interested in what you're doing. I said, I don't even have a resume. I've never had a job. She said, just send them a letter, see what happens. And I did it.
We'll join Karolyn and Chris in just a moment with more of Zuzu All Grown Up.
First, an important message.
Start your morning right with premium coffee roasts available at ZuzuNetwork.com and drink them in your Zuzu All Grown Up coffee mug. Also perfect for tea and hot chocolate.
Stay inspired throughout the day with the same gratitude journal used by Karolyn and Chris. And check out t-shirts, hats, books, Christmas keepsakes, and more at ZuzuNetwork.com/shop.
Join Zuzu's network today at ZuzuNetwork.com/join.
Karolyn is creating an international network of aspiring angels, everyday people who believe that they can help make the world a better place by making life better for even just one other person.
Let us know you want to earn your wings at ZuzuNetwork.com/join, and Karolyn and Chris will send you inspirational material to support you in your journey.
We're back with more Zuzu All Grown Up.
I sat down, I wrote a letter, I told them what I did, and they wrote back. If you're ever in Orlando, give us a call and we would be happy to meet with you. And I was booked down there doing a tour of my stand-up act, and I made arrangements to meet with them. It was surreal. It was a 2-day interview. On the first day, they gave me a list of about 8 shows that they were having trouble with. And they said, go see these shows, tell me how you would improve on it. And the second day, there were 4 different producers because everybody has their own niche. And you would have to speak with each one of them and tell them what you thought, how you would improve on that particular program. Exactly 1 week later, I got a phone call. We have a project. Are you interested? And that's how I ended up working in Disney World. And I loved it. And once I got in there, my phone began to ring and other theme parks started calling me up. And I ended up working at Busch Gardens and SeaWorld and Six Flags and doing shows, writing and directing shows for all the other companies.
Well, I think that was a lot of work.
No, it's not work, Karolyn. You know that. It is so much fun. When you're doing what you love doing, it isn't a job. It is so much fun. And even now, everything I do is still, I say to my son that every day for me is Christmas. Because when the phone rings, you don't know what present, what gift is going to be on the other end. Somebody's going to call up with a new project, a new idea. There are so many things that are available. So I'm doing all these shows for the theme parks. And here I live on Long Island. A gentleman had heard about me, and he was head of historic services for Suffolk County, Long Island. And he was responsible for historic homes all over. And he called me up and he invited me to a new home that they had just restored. It was called Deep Wells. It's here on the island in St. James. And he called me up and he said, we just restored this house. It was in total disrepair. But I know what you do at Disney. Is there anything that you can think of that we can do here to not only entertain the people, but educate them? It has to have an educational component. And I said, well, who owned the house? And he ran off 3 or 4 names, but one of the names popped up, and it was a gentleman by the name of William Gaynor. He was the mayor of New York City, and he had the distinction of being the only mayor in New York who had ever had an assassination attempt on his life. He was shot, but the bullet lodged behind his ear. They did not know how to take it out in those days, and he spent most of his time at Deep Wells. He did all his work out of that home. I said, you know what? This is a good enough story. Why don't we do a series? And I laid the whole thing out for him. And we were going to do a historic series all about not Mr. Gaynor, because he was incapacitated pretty much, but Mrs. Gaynor. And we started putting together a program where women, primarily that was our audience, would come for a tea party and they would meet with Mrs. Gaynor. And they would meet with her domestic. We always had 2 actors playing those parts. And then we'd have a guest star coming in that was somebody that visited that home. And we had a ledger. And people like, oh my gosh, W.C. Fields, Harry Houdini. There were so many people that did visit. And we started doing programs. Then we ended up doing historic programs in museums for 10 years.
Well, it's very creative.
I guess it's true that behind every great man, there's a woman.
I could not have done it. Many of these projects, her name is Mary. She was instrumental. I would do the creative end and she would do the business end. And that's the best thing that ever happened. And she dealt with all the actors and costumes and sound and everything else. And then my son got to the age where he ended up being part of the programs. The first program he ever did for us, we were doing the story of George M. Cohan. And in the middle of the show, you got to picture this beautiful there were windows all around the main room where we were working. And suddenly there's tapping going on all the windows. And George M. says, what's going on? And the domestic, her name was Isabel, she said, oh, it's the kids in the neighborhood. I usually give them a snack around this time. He said, bring them on in. And we had 4 young kids. 2 of them were mine. And we brought them in and they sang and danced with George M. Cohan. It was a big finale. It was fun. And the kids were about your age when you were doing Zuzu. It was an actual dream.
Did they realize what they were doing?
Yes. One of the little boys that auditioned for us came in with a little Fisher-Price tape recorder, put it down in front of me, and he pressed the button, and some music went on, and he sang and he danced, and then he slid across the floor, and he went, yeah. And I said, you're hired. He was just so enthusiastic. I enjoyed working with him.
How did the pandemic affect your work?
We had been doing stage shows for well over 20 years. All of our clients, as you know, all the theaters closed. Everything closed down. We lost all those clients. But then my son said to me, Dad, you've got somewhere around 4,000 people on your mailing list. Because I was an adjunct professor. I was also working, doing lectures. And he said, you can't just leave all these people hanging. Why don't you do something on Monday mornings? And we'll just have a, informal chit chat as we're doing right now. And we started it. It was a Monday morning chit chat. And we sent out all these emails to everybody. And surprisingly, people started showing up. People started filling up the room. Even now, I still get people that approach me and say, you saved me during the pandemic years because I looked forward to that Monday morning. I knew we were going to have a laugh. We were going to have a good time. So we started putting those together.
We'll join Karolyn and Chris in just a moment with more of Zuzu All Grown Up.
First, an important message.
To find out more about the organization featured in today's episode or a previous episode and to learn more about how you can help, go to zuzunetwork.com/beanangel.
Ever tried balancing a dozen eggs in one hand while hopping on one foot? Or maybe juggling cats while riding the unicycle? Sounds ridiculous, right? But guess what? That's exactly what texting while driving is like. Your human brain only has the capacity to focus on one thing at a time. So when you're behind the wheel, give driving your undivided attention.
Don't drive distracted. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Affordable healthcare is better than ever. And right now, there are more carriers and plans to choose from. If you're between 18 and 64 years old with a household income of $25,000 or less, this message is for you. Right now, the government's Affordable Care Act is available for individual and family health coverage plans with little to no cost to you. Don't gamble your health. Call Health Care for All. 70% of callers qualify for a zero-cost health care coverage. See if you are one of them. Call now. Our agents are standing by to help you get the health insurance plan you and your family needs and deserves. If you're uninsured or struggling to afford your current health insurance, help is just a phone call away. This is not Medicaid or Medicare. This is the marketplace with the largest selection of healthcare plans from the Affordable Care Act. To find a plan that's right for you, call 800-788-2406. That's 800-788-2406.
A careless driver can change your life in an instant. Do you know what to do or who to call? If you've been injured in a motor vehicle accident and don't have an attorney, call Auto Accident Help Desk for a free consultation. We can answer all of your questions and estimate the potential value of your case. Call Auto Accident Help Desk and connect with an expert personal injury attorney.
Call 800-348-7312. 800-348-7312.
Don't worry how to handle your medical bills, lost wages, and pain. We will get you the money you deserve.
They got me way more than the insurance company offered.
The consultation is free, and you don't pay any legal fees unless we win or settle your case. Make the smart call if you've been injured in an auto accident. Call Auto Accident Help Desk for a free legal consultation.
Call 800-348-7312. 800-348-7312. 800-348-7312.
Auto Accident.
Zuzu's book club features recommendations from Zuzu herself on books she loves and thinks you will love also. All of the books that the club reads, fiction and nonfiction, are inspirational and uplifting. Folks, this is a life-enhancing club to be part of. You can sign up for free at zuzunetwork.com/book club. That's zuzunetwork.com/book club.
This is Zuzu, all grown up.
In the beginning, I would lecture about different comedies and comedy teams and movies. And on one occasion, I did a story all about Burns and Allen. And when I was done, About an hour later, an email arrived, and it was a woman from New Jersey, and she said, Sal, I loved your speech all about George Burns and Gracie Allen. And by the way, George Burns was my uncle. I said, would you be interested in coming in and talking about George Burns and telling us what it would be like, to have a famous uncle like George Burns? And she said, sure. And she did. She ended up coming on. She brought her husband and her 2 adult kids, and she went on for an hour between the 4 of them, regaling us with great stories about George Burns.
So do you have all this archived somewhere?
Yeah, it's all on my website, salstgeorge.com. It's all there. If you go to celebrity museums, and that is going to be our next discussion. I don't want to give away too much, but what happened with the George Burns situation, once I saw how it drew a bigger audience when we were talking about George Burns, I was trying to figure out how can I open up that door and get more celebrities to be guests. And then I did a search, and I found out there are celebrity museums around the world. And I started sending out emails to all of them right away. The Clark Gable Museum, the Red Skelton Museum, Rosemary Clooney Museum, and it goes on and on. They all said, sure, because everybody was closed. And this was a way for them to still reach people and keep their name alive. And at the same time, they were reaching a wider audience because many people didn't know, oh, I didn't know there was a Clark Gable Museum. I didn't know that. And they were starting to learn. And we're still doing them today. We're still going to celebrity museums around the world. We got invited to go to the Phil Silvers Museum. Again, these are all through Zoom, so people can sit home the way we're doing it right now, and they could watch tours through all these museums. But we went to the Phil Silvers Museum, and I'm sure you remember who Phil Silvers was.
Oh, absolutely.
But his museum was in Covington, England. And I spoke with Steve, the curator, the director, and I said, Steve, why are you having a Phil Silvers museum in England? He was born in Brooklyn, New York. And he said, well, here in England, they ran the Bilko show every night for like 20, 30 years. And it was on all the time. It was really popular. And he said, I figured if they were that popular, maybe a museum about Phil Silvers would be interesting. And he contacted Phil Silvers' daughter, and she said, I would love a museum about my father. And she started supplying costumes and scripts and all kinds of memorabilia to start him off. And now it's a beautiful museum. That was one of the first ones that we went to.
That makes me think about, there's a John Wayne Film Society, and it's located in Sherwood Forest. And I did an appearance there in England. I was just amazed that there was a John Wayne Film Society there.
Is it a museum?
No, it's just a group. And they show John Wayne films, and they have a convention every year. But it's in the middle of Sherwood Forest. It's like, wow.
And you've got the connection because you worked with him.
Yes. Yes. And so, of course, they showed Rio Grande, and we went and talked about it. But it's just amazing to me that those things are popular in the United Kingdom.
It is surprising. There is also in England, there is a Laurel and Hardy Museum, but there's one here in the States. We're going there in a couple of weeks. We're also going to the Judy Garland Museum. There's just so many of them. And I love it. Like I said, every day's Christmas.
Well, you've been to the It's a Wonderful Life Museum.
Absolutely. I was jumping up and down cheering when that one came through because the movie means a lot to me. I'll tell you how I got my Wonderful Life poster. In those days, I was doing stand-up. And here on Long Island, now this is the time when if you were opening a movie house, it was a movie house. Just one screen. That was it. One screen movie house. And they were opening a theater called the Encore Theater. And they hired me because the owner, Joe, wanted it to be like a vaudeville show, open up with a live act and then show the movie. So I went in there, I did my stand-up, did well. Everybody had a good time. And then they were putting the movie on. And as I was changing, Joe came to me, says, we got a problem. I said, what's the matter? In those days, and you'll know this, Karolyn, movies were shown with 2 projectors side by side. And the first projector would have a reel going and it would run for about 20 minutes. And when that one ended, This one would go on, and that would run for 20 minutes, and they'd put another reel on, and they would keep going back and forth. Projector number 2 was not working at all. He said, well, what are we going to do? I said, wait a minute, how long does it take you to change a spool? He said, 2 to 3 minutes. It's nothing to put the spool on. I said, okay, look, in the audience, this is your grand opening. It's all your friends, your relatives, local politicians. These are all people that care about you. When you have to change the spool, I'll go out there. I'll kibitz with the audience. We'll talk about the movie. And then when you're ready, put the next spool on. He said, well, you'll do that? You'll stay? I said, yeah. So that's how the night went. They were showing the movie. And every 20 minutes, I went on, I did some jokes, fooled around with the guests, talked about the movie, and then the film would go back on again. And we did that for the whole length of the movie. A week later, after it was over, Joe calls me up and he says, can you come back down to the theater? And I said, sure. And when I got there, there was a huge box on a table. He said, you have no idea what you did for us that night. You saved us. Everybody was happy. They had a good time. And this is a little gift for you. And I opened it up, and it was the original It's a Wonderful Life poster.
Okay.
And that's how I ended up getting that poster. It was a beautiful gift. It was a beautiful thought, and I really appreciated it. And I still have it hanging up right now in my office.
Oh, that's just wonderful.
Beautiful story.
We want to look forward to talking to you again. But for today, we'll just say we've enjoyed talking with you so much, and we've learned a lot.
I always leave with a saying, and I'll leave it with you. We have no choice in life. None of us. We have no choice. We're all going to grow older. We have no choice. We're going to grow older. We just do not have to grow old. You got to keep the child alive inside of you.
Yes, I agree with you.
Never grow old. No.
And I said that all wrong. You see that? You got me. We're all going to grow older. We just do not have to grow up. That's the answer.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Keep the child alive inside of you. That's it. Thank you so much, Karolyn, for inviting me. This has been a pleasure. Chris, great talking with you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank
We
you.
look forward to talking to you again.
What a ride. Sal's stories remind us how powerful creativity can be when it's rooted in joy, curiosity, and connection. Whether it's building a show or saving the night with a stand-up set, Sal proves that showbiz isn't just about lights and applause. It's about the heart. Sal, thank you for sharing your journey with us. This has been Zuzu, all grown up.
Do you know someone who is earning their wings? Someone practicing kindness and service to others? Perhaps an organization or initiative helping make the world we live in a kinder, sweeter place.
Or maybe you've witnessed the miraculous, the divine, the magnificent in some way in your life, and you'd like to share it with others. Go to zuzunetwork.com/tellmystory and let us know more.
You may end up being featured on an upcoming episode of Zuzu All Grown Up. That's zuzunetwork.com/tellmystory.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Zuzu All Grown Up.
We hope you've been inspired to live your most wonderful life now and to help those around you do the same.
Remember, no matter what you're going through, no matter who you are, there are people who care about you, and your life makes a difference.
It is a wonderful life.
Check out ZuzuNetwork.com for more on today's and other episodes, including transcripts and merchandise you won't want to be without.
New episodes are coming soon.
For transcripts of today's broadcast, go to ZuzuNetwork.com/transcripts.
Watch a video clip of today's episode at www.instagram.com/Zuzu, all grown up. Then click on the Reels tab from the top of the center of the page. Catch up on past episodes and discover currently premiering and upcoming episodes as well, and get helpful links and exclusive clips from our recordings. That's www.instagram.com/Zuzu, all grown up.
Zuzu All Grown Up with your hosts Karolyn Grimes and Dr. Chris Brunell.
Announcer and guide Seth Kennedy.
Executive producer Kevin R. Stillmock.
Coordinating producer Holly Ann Way.
Technical producer Stella Joelle.
Managing producer Karina Filatova. A Wonderful Land production.
In collaboration with Radio Wonderful.